So I think it is the best and the biggest 3D film that we've ever done. And I think there's always added value when you go see a film in 3D, but sometimes, you know, The Winter Soldier, for instance, is the way the Russo brothers did that film. 3D added some, but there was so much of that film that was sort of visceral, whether you saw it in 2D or 3D. This movie, I think, is actually better in 3D. I think you are more immersed in the worlds of this film in 3D. And to accommodate the IMAX screen, we actually are changing the aspect ratio for IMAX films. So you'll get the full width of the screen that you'll get when you see it in 3D elsewhere, where you see it in 2D elsewhere. But in IMAX, you'll get the information that's on top of that and below that. And James went through and chose the particular moments, the particular sequences, where when you're watching IMAX, we'll actually go to the full range of this screen, which again is just an added element to immerse you into the adventure.
Absolutely. So let's go back to the beginning with this movie then, because I imagine at Marvel HQ over in LA, there's a massive wall chart with lots of post-it notes, red string, linking phase 1 to phase 2, and you guys seem to plan well in advance. So at what point on that giant wall chart, if it exists, did Guardians of the Galaxy go up there?
I don't know that we actually have a wall chart like that. You know what we had for many years was this awesome, and I don't know the artist, but it was an awesome, gigantic Marvel Universe poster, which was a consumer poster that was probably from, I want to say the 80s or early 90s, that had dozens, hundreds of our characters in this giant collage. And we used to go up to it and look at who's the smallest character, the most obscure character on here. And when people would come in for a meeting, we'd quiz them. I don't think the Guardians were even on that poster, frankly. But Guardians came about, you know, when Abbott and Lanning did, I want to say in 2008, the new incarnation of the Guardians in the comics. We just thought it was very, very cool. And you know, we always love the idea of doing a big space epic, of taking the Marvel Cinematic Universe and pushing it to the other side of that universe. In the comics, the characters are traversing the galaxies and the broader Marvel Universe all the time. So we were sort of thinking, wouldn't it be fun someday to be able to do a big space movie? And it was, I don't know exactly the year, maybe 2010 or 11, when we had a writers program where we brought in young writers, and they just started working on movies and on scripts for projects that might turn into a movie someday and might never turn into a movie. But it was a way to nurture talent and to have a in-studio base of writers, and that program ended up going very, very well for us, and a lot of those writers went on to work on other films for us. But a woman named Nicole Perlman did a draft of what became Guardians of the Galaxy, and it was based on her draft that we said, wait a minute, this is more than just a fun idea of someday wouldn't it be cool if. This actually could be the movie. And then when we gave it to James Gunn is when it became what it is today.
Did the introduction of Thanos at the end of Avengers, or Avengers Assemble, as is known over here, did that influence you in a way, given Thanos' connection to some of the characters, as we've just seen?
Sure. I mean, that also just solidified the notion of beginning to crack the door open a little bit wider on the cosmic side of the Marvel Universe. I think Thor did that in a big way, both of the Thor films, and Joss in adding the notion of Thanos behind Loki's army did that even more. And Thanos is the primary link right now between the Guardians world and the Avengers world.
Because otherwise, that doesn't, and you said this in your introduction, this doesn't feel like any of the Marvel movies previously. We've talked in the past about taking risks, and Marvel Studios from the off has been a risk. Iron Man could have, that was a massive risk. Every character, even though they were A-list characters, top-tier characters, essentially, could have failed. This title, this team, as you said, not many people knew. Would that give you pause at any point? We're going out here, we're now a huge concern. We've just had Avengers, and we're going out here with characters that nobody knows.
No, I mean, it gives. We want to be aware of it in terms of how we market the film, in terms of when we release the film, but in terms of actually creatively making the movie, I'm not sure it felt any more or less a risk than the first Iron Man, as you point out, or the first World War II period piece Captain America film, or the Asgardian romp of Thor. I think they all have their own challenges, even Avengers itself. People forget that we were in production on the first Avengers film prior to the release of either Thor or Captain America. So audiences hadn't told us yet that they had embraced Chris Hemsworth as Thor, or Tom Hiddleston as Loki, or Chris Evans as Captain America. We just sort of were all in, so to speak, on the plan, and the production got much more relaxed about halfway through when we realized, oh, people did like it, it did work. So they've always been a bit of the unknown. I think you get that in filmmaking of any kind at any level. And the minute you take that for granted and aren't thinking that something is risky or something isn't a sure bet, is probably the time you start making bad decisions.
Can you talk about the decision to go with Rocket and Groot, and how did you do those guys? Because obviously Bradley Cooper and Vin Diesel came on as voices. Quite like the process. They weren't on set necessarily, or did they sneak on?
They weren't on set, but they were. I want to say they were cast early on in the production.
But they were announced quite late, though.
They were announced probably late, but they were on board. They were on board while we were filming, and recorded sort of a number of times throughout that process and into post. And with Bradley, it was always very important to us that Rocket, who was always going to be a digital character, but who we did not want to be a cartoon in any way, shape, or form. So, we knew that the amazing artists at the VFX company's Frame Store and MPC would do an amazing job, and it wouldn't look like a cartoon, it would look like a photoreal creature. But we wanted the voice. Rocket doesn't know, as you saw in that piece, that he's a raccoon. Rocket certainly doesn't know that he's a cartoon character. And there were a lot of early auditions that came in of voice actors who it felt like there was, even underneath the surface somewhere, an acknowledgement that it was an animated character. And we wanted an actor who was great, and who didn't play it like a cartoon, who didn't play it like the way a raccoon, whatever that sounds like, should sound like. So we had a walk cycle, what's called a walk cycle. Visual effect companies would have the model of in this case, Rocket, rigged to just walk, and the camera spins around it so you can begin to see how the muscles move and how the fur moves in the air and how the lighting is affected as you go 360 degrees around it. But in the process of making a film, the walk cycle is the first time you actually have a near photorealistic version of the character. So we had this Rocket walk cycle, and while we were searching for a voice, we took just great monologues from great actors in other movies and put them against the walk cycle. So these were from lots of other movies, so clearly they weren't playing it as if they were raccoon. They had no idea we were going to put their Academy Award-winning monologue against the walking raccoon cycle. And we did it for Bradley in his scene with Robert De Niro from Silver Linings Playbook. And something about that sort of clicked, and it was very exciting to us. But we thought, well, we're not going to get Bradley Cooper, but it should be that type. And we reached out, and he was interested in it. And the screenplay and James won him over, and that's how we ended up with him, which was, I still can't believe it. He did an amazing job.
Can you remember what other monologues were in that little test reel?
I can't really remember, and then I don't want to say it, because then those actors go, why didn't you call me? Or they'll go, thank God you didn't call me. I'm not sure.
Travis Bickle's You Talking to Me might have been a perfect fit in some ways. And can you talk about Groot and Vin Diesel as well? Getting Vin Diesel on to say 3 words.
Well, there are 2 things. One is Groot is a character that is very important to James, is very important to us. And even though he's a rather large tree-like creature, and he only says 3 words, it was very important in the way that James wrote the draft. At the beginning of the movie, which is sort of what you just saw, it's very funny. It's sort of ridiculous, this tree character who only says 3 words. And then as the movie progresses, you start to kind of find yourself understanding what he means. You sort of understand, oh, there's a difference in the inflection, in the way he says things. And Rocket can understand him completely. But even you as an audience member starts to go, oh, he is a sentient creature that has opinions, that has a point of view. And by the end of the movie, hopefully you're completely and emotionally attached to him. And some things he does in the finale has people tell us after they see the movie they were welling up, they were crying for. That was exactly the journey we needed for this character. So again, we wanted an actor. We wanted somebody who could actually do that. And during the casting process, Vin had come in for a general meeting, and Vin has a gigantic fan base, and a gigantic, in particular, Facebook fan base. And he started posting just about his meetings with us, or when he was going to meet with us. So I think we were doing a press visit on Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and people were going, "Have you met Vin Diesel yet, or how did your Vin Diesel meeting go?" And coincidentally, it ended up being that day actually that we met with him, and we were talking, and still are, about what we could do in the future in a bigger part. But there became this sort of odd fever, at least in the online community, about what Vin was going to do with Marvel. And in terms of a grand plan, there was we hadn't found anything yet. And it occurred to me that Vin did an awesome voiceover role many years ago called the Iron Giant. Oh yeah. And I started thinking of the similarities between the Iron Giant and Groot. Iron Giant says more than Groot does, but it doesn't say much. And I don't know that people are even aware that Vin did that role. So I spoke to James. I said, "What about Vin? What if we could get Vin to do this? He's clearly interested in us. We're interested in him. I think he would do it." And James said that'd be amazing. He was here filming at that point. And we reached out to Vin, and thank God he loved the idea. He was totally into it, and he's come in 2 or 3 times to do it. And he took it very, very seriously. He made James write out. When you go in for an ADR session, you always have a cue sheet. And in this case, there was the cue sheet, which was, "I am Groot, I 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 am Groot." But next to it, James put what that really meant. What Groot really meant in this moment in the movie. What he meant when he said it this time. And he ended up doing a full few days with Vin. It was a real acting and a real directing process to get it across. And it shows in the movie. And every grunt and every effort is all Vin, and it really is one of the best performances in the movie, in a movie full of great performances.
Fantastic. I think we can bring the spotlight down because it's time for you to ask questions of Kevin if you have anything. There's a hand right at the very, very back there, and one here right in the front row. We'll start with you, and then we'll go right to the back. Thank you.
Hi there. Firstly, my kids are very excited. They watched the Ultimate Spider-Man series, so they were very aware of these characters from that over the last year. I've got a question from my 9-year-old son. Obviously, there are 3 key groups. You've got, obviously, Guardians of the Galaxy, you've got the X-Men, and you've got the Avengers. If you were a superhero, which of those teams would you choose, and why?
Wow, that's a tough choice. I think it depends the mood that you're in. I think somebody described at one point, I don't remember if it was James or if it was Zoe, that the Avengers are the Beatles and the Guardians are the Rolling Stones. Who would the X-Men be? I don't know who the X-Men would be.
Hermits.
No. So I think it depends on your mood. I've been spending a lot of time with the Guardians over the last year or so. So I think it would be a lot of fun to ride around on the Milano with them. The Avengers have a lot of responsibility, and the Guardians less so. So I think it might be a slightly lighter, fun time with them, at least for now.
Okay, there's a gentleman right at the very, very back. We'll have to raise the microphone up to you, and then right at the very, very back, and then there's another gentleman with a hand up there. I can't see very well, and then a couple of people down here. There we go. Yes, that gentleman there, yeah.
So you used Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as kind of a bridging property for some of the movies that came out while that was on air. With Guardians coming out while that's between seasons, will you be doing anything to tie in when the show returns?
I'm not sure. They're working on the 2nd season right now, and they're cracking the episodes for that right now. So I'm not exactly sure of what their plans are, but I know that everyone's very happy about the connectivity between Winter Soldier and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And they're aware of what we're doing in the movies, and sort of will take the lead from the features. So I think they've already tied in a couple of blue aliens in the 1st season to things that may or may not relate to blue aliens in Guardians. I'm not being coy, by the way. I'm not sure if it does or not. So there's always that chance. of connectivity, but I'm not exactly sure what they've got in store for episode by episode in season 2.
How about the Netflix stuff? Will that directly impact the MCU as well, with Daredevil and Iron Fist?
I think it'll be, they're being very, very smart about that and approaching those shows the way we approach movies, which is focus on, what you're working on first and make it as great as you can be, beginning, middle, and end, and then look to see if there are places where it makes sense for some interweaving of continuity. But right now their goal, and they're in production on the Daredevil series now, is make the best incarnation of Daredevil that has ever existed.
Okay, there's a gentleman right up there with the microphone. Thank you.
Well, Chris stole my question, but sorry. You talked about Bradley Cooper and Vin Diesel's casting. Can you talk a bit about Chris Pratt? A lot of people know him from Parks and Recreation, but obviously he's now Jurassic World and the Lego movie. He's really coming into his own. Can you talk a bit about his casting?
Sure. I mean, we knew that the movie was going to work, or it was going to work or fail based on the casting of Peter Quill. Peter Quill is in a film with talking raccoons and talking trees and green women and grayish red hulking maniacs and blue and pink and yellow people in various planets and worlds. That what was going to link and ground and anchor the movie for the primarily human audience that is going to see it was the character Peter Quill, and also we can talk about this a little bit later. Also, by extension, the music and the soundtrack. So we wanted, and what sets this movie apart and what makes it, we think, particularly Marvel, is it isn't just taking place on the other side of the universe without any connection at all to Earth or to humanity. The movie has a little bit on Earth by way of introduction of Peter. Peter is our human entry point into this world, and we needed to be entertained by him, and we needed to be moved by him, and we needed to connect to him. So that was a long process, and we auditioned a lot of people and did quite sort of elaborate screen tests, more elaborate than we'd ever done before, and more of them than we had ever done before in search of a star for one of our films. And we saw, I don't remember now what it is, but it was probably close to a dozen, very, very good, relatively well-known actors for this part. And Chris came in, and I think you can read about it now that James and Chris have been talking about this. Chris initially sort of didn't want to come in. I think he felt a little self-conscious because his body was in Parks and Recreation shape, which is much closer to the shape I'm in than the shape he's in now. And the audition required things like, the costume didn't exist at that point yet, obviously, but we knew what the costume was going to be, so we put all the actors in these long trench coats with these guns and made them do, in addition to a couple of the actual acting scenes, we made them do some posing where they hold the guns out, gunslinger style towards the camera and stuff. And he, I think, was self-conscious about doing that. And in fact, when eventually he came in to do that, it wasn't based on that move that we cast him, let's put it that way. Now it's a signature move and is in the piece you just saw and is awesome. But he was by far the most dynamic, the most charismatic of any of the actors we'd seen, and the closest that gave us the feeling, look, we have a barometer now when we're casting. It's Downey, it's Hemsworth, it's Evans, it's Ruffalo, it's Renner, it's Scarlett. So when we're bringing somebody into the universe, that's a high bar that they have to mention. And sometimes you find yourself going, okay, well, I guess this could work, or this person could be good. But what you really want to feel is, that's the guy, no question, get him. And we weren't feeling that until Chris came in. And Chris also was the reason we cast Dave Bautista, because James was very smart and ended up doing these chemistry tests between Chris Pratt, once we decided to hire him, and thankfully he agreed to do it, and Dave Bautista. And that was really what brought out Dave. Dave had done a number of good auditions by himself up to that point, but it was really when we put the two of them together that they both came to life even more. So the fact that the Lego movie came out and is, I think, tied, or just below, Captain America: The Winter Soldier for the biggest, one of the biggest movies of the year, is a bonus, and the fact that he's getting all this heat for Jurassic World is a bonus. The best thing for us is he's the perfect Peter Quill, and will take his rightful place alongside all those other iconic Marvel actors.
I think Cap has just taken Lego movie. I think it just did. There we go. There's a gentleman right here. Thank you.
Actually, it's a similar question about Karen Gillan. How was she brought into it? Was Doctor Who on in The Office? Or?
No. It was again the audition process. We were looking at people in the States and we were looking at people here, and she had a great. Well, it was two things. One, she had a great audition. It was a nice bonus that there was a fan base from Doctor Who, but that wasn't the driving factor. And she was willing to shave her head, and she ended up not only shaving her head, but you may recall at Comic-Con last year she came out on the panel in a wig and sort of dramatically revealed it, and it was so ballsy and it was so awesome. And she did all of her interviews and her behind-the-scenes interviews that you'll start to see rolling out in this movie, completely bald, out of makeup, completely bald. And she's beautiful with hair, without hair. So it was really, really cool that she was willing to do that. And her audition was good. Nebula, the character she's playing, is a conflicted character and is a character that needs to have a number of different layers and a performance that comes through her rather sort of striking and dramatic look.
I'm afraid that's all the time we have for questions. I'm sorry, because Kevin actually has a surprise, though, which you'd be glad to hear. I don't think I want to queue up that surprise, Kevin.
Is that the throw to the surprise?
That was the throw to the surprise. Did you get that? We should have rehearsed that.
I got it. Well, yes, this is something that I've only shown at one other place, and I don't know that we'll show again anytime soon. But this is a little look at what we're working on right now here in London, which is Avengers Age of Ultron. This is what we call an in-production piece.